My castaway this week is a conductor. He was born 65 years ago in what became East Germany, and after a career which saw him conducting most of that country's leading orchestras, he defected to the West. He was 45. 3 years later, he was acclaimed as an international maestro in a performance with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. He went on to conduct most of the world's top orchestras and became the principal conductor of the London Philharmonic. But with success came personal sadness. 6 years ago, he developed cancer of the vocal cords and was forced to resign his post. Today, his fight against illness is over, and his audiences are once more enjoying the intense mixture of emotion and physical energy, the balance between heart and intellect, which he brings to his performances. He is Klaus Tennstedt. It's a very physical performance you give from the podium. I presume the last thing you think about when you're there is what you look like.
It is a mixture between physical things and things with the heart. You must have the balance between heart and technique, and so I hope I have the balance, and my audience, they have the same feeling.
Well, one of your critics has said before now, although very fondly, I'm sure, that you look like a kind of agitated crane when you're on the podium. Have you seen yourself? I mean, have you ever seen yourself on...
Oh, yeah. I've seen me in the video. Maybe I do a little bit too much physically.
And when you've finished conducting, do you feel completely, both physically and emotionally drained?
Maybe like a sportsman, I lose 4 or 5 pounds.
In one performance?
Yes.
And what?
Like work, like 8 Mahler or 6 Mahler, so the great works.
So what's the first record that you'll put on your gramophone?
There's a word in German. This means Sternstunde. It's not to translate. You cannot translate. What do you say for this word?
I think it's sort of climax or finest hour, is it?
Yeah. And it was with one of the most difficult symphony. It was the Pastoral Symphony by Beethoven. We did it in 2 sessions, and the orchestra was in such a wonderful form. You know, it is technically, is the symphony for the orchestra not difficult. But other things, inside, you know, you must have this. Yeah, I was so happy. That's the first record, what I take to the island. That's all, that's very easy.
That was part of the first movement of Beethoven's Symphony No. 6 in F major, Opus 68, the Pastoral, played by the London Philharmonic, conducted by my castaway, Klaus Tennstedt. When was the first time, Maestro, that you conducted in public?
it is almost a criminal story. You know, I was leader, violinist, in the orchestra in Halle, this town where Handel is born. And one evening, the conductor of a modern opera was sick. Yeah, nobody was there. And I knew this work very well. And they asked me, can you conduct this opera? I never conduct in my life, you know. I didn't know the reaction of the orchestra. But I said, okay, I do it. And this performance was sure not the best, but it was no catastrophe.
How old were you?
23.
And your father was in the orchestra, wasn't
Yes, my father was the leader in the second violins.
So what did
And
he think?
He was crazy, you know. He was near the heart attack.
Did he know then that it was you who was going to come out on the podium and conduct?
No, before, not. He didn't know this.
Did you know from that moment that conducting was for
Yeah,
you?
sure.
Yeah.
The alternative for violin playing.
Yeah.
I couldn't play anymore because between my fingers was, we say, ganglion.
A growth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was not possible. And people say I was a good violin player. But I was interested always for conductors.
Shall we have your second record? What's that to be?
The second record is the Symphony number 6 by Tchaikovsky. And when I was a child, so 15 years old, the Second World War began. And Hitler and his propaganda minister, Goebbels, they had forbidden in this moment to play or to listen Russian music, Jewish music, like Mendelssohn or so. Never. Nothing was allowed. And one day my father came home from a friend and he came with 6 records. I said to my father, my God, what's this, 6 records? Yeah, he said, this is one symphony. But I said, Father, we cannot hear this. It is forbidden, you know. What shall we do? And then I said, Father, we go in bed with our old gramophone and we take over our head a big sheet. And then we listen. And then really we listen. And in the last movement, my father said, son, listen, this is one of the greatest orchestras in the world, Philadelphia. Ah, yeah. I said, no. And 40 years later, I conduct 1981 this orchestra the first time. And since this time, I'm there every year. And sure, I told them, the Philadelphia Orchestra, this story.
And did your father live to hear you conduct that?
No. He died 62. It's a pity.
part of the last movement of Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 6 in B minor, Opus 74, the Pathetique, played by the Philadelphia Orchestra, conducted by Eugene Ormandy, and first heard by Klaus Tennstedt in his teens under the Eiderdown, one of the forbidden Russian composers. You were 13, Maestro, when war broke out. Did you find yourself taking an active part in the Hitlerjugend, or did you manage to get out of that?
No, never. My father was an enemy of the Nazis. I grew up against them. Sure, in the school we had the false history, It was usual, but my father said always, don't believe them.
It was all obviously a very long time ago. Haven't you become quite recently the first German to conduct the Israeli Philharmonic?
Oh yes, this was so fantastic. But it was not so easy that I could come to Israel in my age, I can be a young Nazi, but I could come to them, and from the first moment on, it was a friendship. It was unbelievable. And from the Israeli Philharmonic, in connection with the Knesset, I got the highest present from this country. That means 36 trees. That means pinions,
They planted 36 trees in your honor.
That is mine. The 36 trees are mine, near Jerusalem. It's are mine. When I died 500 years later, my trees are there.
They're there to wish you long life on. Let's have your third record there. What's that?
This is long, long ago. I heard a record by Scholti with the Vienna Philharmonic and the great Birgit Nilsson and Salome. That's all. This is very interesting for me. Also today, it was a fantastic record.
Birgit Nilsson singing the finale of Richard Strauss's Salome with the Wiener Philharmoniker, conducted by Sir George Scholti. After you were discovered, as it were, Klaus Tennstedt, as a conductor, you went on to become the music director of the Dresden Opera and the State Orchestra in Schwerin, and then you conducted most of the major East German orchestras. But you've said since that you felt stifled. Can you explain that to me?
Sure. I never could play what I want, The Communism Party was always with you. And sure, also in the orchestra there were communism and communism people.
So you were always controlled, you were always told what you could do.
Yes. And the main thing for my escape was I couldn't go out as a guest conductor to New York or to London or nothing.
So how long did it take you? How long were you thinking about defecting before you actually did it?
Oh, we thought about this all these years. But our families were in East. And then suddenly it came the wall, you know? And then we were thinking about an escape every day. But it was not a possibility.
And how did you do it in the end?
Yeah, then one day I got a visa to Sweden. And from Sweden I organized the escape for my wife. Because I could go to Sweden only alone, without my wife. And then I took a flight, and some people there, sure for a lot of money, they organized escapes. Very dangerous.
What, over the wall?
No, my wife got with false passport over Hungary and Czechoslovakia.
And so she came out and joined you?
And then she came out.
And have you been back now since?
Yeah,
since
sure,
it's all opened
now
up?
it's no problem.
How did you feel when you first went back?
Oh, all these bad things, you know, the buildings are terrible, facade, all the streets, and good enough to eat, but what kind of eat? Maybe like English food.
I think we better have another record there.
For me, Jesse Norman is one of the greatest singers today in the world. Maybe like Birgit Nilsson in the past, you know. And I would make with Jesse Norman Wagner record. So what can we do? Jesse said, I never sing Götterdämmerung. That is too much for me. And I said, Jesse, please, do it for me. You has not to sing the whole ring. You know, only the wonderful, unbelievable finale. And so she said, yes, I did it. And I think it is a great performance.
The finale of Wagner's Goethe-Dämmerung, sung by Jesse Norman with the London Philharmonic, conducted by Klaus Tennstedt. So there you were in the early 70s, maestro, just about middle-aged, virtually unknown in world terms, but well-known, obviously, in East Germany. Tell me about your explosion on the international scene. How did that come about?
Sometimes in Kiel, the manager from the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, he heard me. And he said, "You must come to Toronto." I said, completely unknown, And I went to Toronto, and it was a big success. And then came Boston. I thought, my God, Boston Symphony Orchestra. Okay. And then I said, I want to make one of the most difficult works, Bruckner 8.
They were letting you choose, were they?
Yeah. And after it was I must say, an unbelievable success. And the next time, the most dangerous critic, he wrote in the Boston Globe, Bruckner, BSO, Tennstedt, once in a lifetime. And then it was very, very easy.
And then you got invitations from across the world.
Wow, for the Magic Five. And so that means New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Boston.
And you accepted all these invitations.
And then it was not far away that London Symphony Orchestra, London Symphony makes such ears, And I conduct there. And it was so funny. In the intermission, I saw on my table a prospect from the London Philharmonic. So, and then the way was not far to come in connection with the London Philharmonic.
It was, I think, 9 years after you'd become this kind of overnight sensation that you eventually became the principal conductor and the musical director.
I had it, yeah.
Of the London Philharmonic. It's been called a love affair between you. What is it? What is the nature of this love affair between you and that orchestra?
Yeah, maybe that is a secret. I can't say this. This orchestra is so flexible, and it is a romantic orchestra, and I feel I am a romantic conductor, so we are good together,
It's said that you tell them, or at least when you were rehearsing Mahler's 8th earlier this year, that they're the best orchestra in the world. Now, did you mean that, or do you say that to all the orchestras you work with?
No, I think you must be careful with superlatives, sure. But I think no orchestra in the world can Mahler better play than London Philharmonic. That's true, that's my feeling,
Let's pause for some more music.
Mahler 6 is a special symphony for me because I have the feeling, not only me, I have the feeling the 6th Mahler is Mahler's biography of his terrible life. And he would be one of the greatest composer. But people in the past, they said, you are one of the greatest conductor. And he hated this. Yeah, and now, thanks God, we have an unbelievable Mahler Renaissance. And so it is also a highlight with the London Philharmonic to make the 6th Mahler the most difficult symphony. So grandiose. I'm very happy about that.
The finale of Mahler's Symphony No. 6 in A minor, played by the London Philharmonic, conducted by my castaway, Klaus Tennstedt. It was in 1985, Maestro, that you discovered you had cancer of the vocal cords. What happened? What were the first signs that you had of it?
It was in Philadelphia. The voice was worse and worse during the rehearsals. And my wife was very afraid. And we went to the doctor, a very well-known doctor in Philadelphia. And he said, you must go home very fast. And well-known doctor in the university hospital, he made a control and said, yes, you have cancer. And then I got 70, and then one was okay, and then it came the other. But I couldn't get more radiations, you know. It was finished. And I must have operation. You know?
How many operations did you have?
7.
But how did it affect you as a person? Did it change you? Must have
No.
done.
Yeah. Maybe you become more serious. You think more about your life. And that's good for music, you know?
Shall we have the next record?
Yeah. That's very strange and very special. You know, I was violinist and I had my own string quartet. And sometimes I heard a record from the second string quartet by Leos Janáček. And I love Janáček. I heard this the first time in the original version. I was breathless, you know? And we tried it and after 5 minutes we said, okay, forget it, you know? And that's the reason that I would like to bring this record to the Desert Island.
The end of the fourth movement of Janáček's String Quartet No. 2, Intimate Letters, played by the Janáček Quartet. How is your violin playing these days, Maestro? Do you ever pick one up and play?
I never play. I can't hear me. You know, when you're not practice every day, then forget the violin. I know enough about violin playing, and the orchestra string player, they believe me. You know, that's the secret. To develop a sound with an orchestra.
And we've said that that's a draining experience for you, but is it also what you live for, those moments of performance and the moment it's over and you know that you and your orchestra have done something supremely well? Is that the joy of your life?
It's a nice feeling. Yeah. It's not the only joy. No. Music is not the only joy for me. I think there are more things between heaven and earth, you know?
Tell me about your other joys.
History, antique, paintings, impressionism, reading. I have about 1,000 books. Important books for me.
And what about your wife?
Yeah, that's my hobby, my biggest hobby. sometimes.
You'd find it difficult to manage without her, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah, without her, forget it.
Let's have your 7th record.
The name is Nigel Kennedy, you know. And one day my company came to me and said, you must do, or want you to do the very difficult Brahms Violin Concerto with Nigel Kennedy. And I looked in a newspaper and I saw a terrible punker. And I said, with this man to make Brahms Violin Concerto? EMI said, believe us, he is fantastic. And I said, okay. And from the first minute, in the first session, Nigel Kennedy was another person, another man, absolutely serious. He is a fantastic man, a fantastic violinist, I think one of the best today. And he said about me, that's my big monster.
Nigel Kennedy playing the beginning of the 3rd movement of Brahms' Violin Concerto in D, Opus 77, with the London Philharmonic, conducted by Klaus Tennstedt. How are you going to cope, Klaus Tennstedt, on this desert island? Will you be able to look after yourself?
No, why I have to be alone there? That's funny. I cannot be alone, and I cannot, like Robinson Crusoe, build a little house or so. I would be helpless, you know. Yeah. I would go in the ocean. And
you'd drown yourself.
So this question is not possible for me. You know, the desert island is maybe a big dream, nothing else.
Do you have a dream left in your musical career? Is there one orchestra or one piece of music or one opera that you still long to conduct?
Maybe once, but I think it's not possible. I don't have time enough. Maybe The Ring by Wagner.
Let's have your last record.
Many, many years ago, I heard a Falstaff record conducted by Arturo Toscanini. You know, there's the big Milano Scala. And they built a piccola Scala. That means more intimate, yeah? And the opening of this house was Falstaff under Toscanini. And for me, Toscanini was maybe the greatest opera conductor. And this Falstaff was unbelievable. I can never forget this.
Giuseppe Valdengo singing part of the finale of Verdi's Falstaff with the NBC Symphony Orchestra conducted by Arturo Toscanini. So, which of those 8 records, Maestro, is the one that you would choose as being more important to you than any of the others?
I think all the 8 are important. And you say I can bring all these recordings to the desert island.
You can take all 8, but if you had just one...
I cannot hear every day the same recording when I am there alone. My God, this is terror.
This is purgatory. If the tide came in and swept away 7 of the records and there was just one left...
I think one, for me, is the Symphony No. 6 by Mahler.
And a book. Sitting on the beach, you already have, you see, the Shakespeare and the Bible.
Tell me, what shall I read when I have only one book?
Well, you've got the whole works of Shakespeare in English.
Then I take my dictionary on the island.
Right.
Okay, no, but one of my bestsellers is Dr. Faustus by Thomas Mann. It is such a fantastic book about modern music, you know.
And a luxury.
If the island is a little hilly, then I take with me a very, very expensive mountain bike.
To go round and round in circles.
Okay.
A mountain bike is yours, and let me say, Maestro Klaus Tennstedt, thank you very much indeed for letting us hear your Desert Island Discs.
Thank you.
Sue Lawley's guest at the same time next week will be David Bailey. Desert Island Discs was created by Roy Plumley and is produced by Janet Lee.